So, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, because of some issues at the end moment, I couldn't join and be physically there to present this. So, I would be presenting this paper on behalf of myself and my supervisor, Dr. Lalit. So, yeah, so starting with my PPT. So yes, Daya Krishnan wrote a fantastic paper where he describes, about that, somewhere he's trying to compare or have like sort of, correlate self-awareness with divinity. So why do I start with his quote here is because that is something which draws parallel with Trigger Shaivism or Kashmir Shaivism as we know it. So in the PPT, I have divided some schools as idealistic schools and some are realistic schools. I know idealism and realism are not the opposite of concepts, but this is what we were sticking to while we were talking about consciousness. So the idealist schools that I would be discussing very briefly would be Advait Vedant, Yogachar Buddhism, and of course Triga Shaivism would be a part of it. And in realism, I would be very shortly discussing Sankhya, but I would be concentrating more on Nyaya, and not just the old Nyaya, but the Nav Nyaya or later Nyaya as we state. So just to clarify, when I say idealism, I would be stating that that consciousness is actually the reality that they're talking about in the material world is a mental construct, where realism, they say that the external world is existing independently and can be known through sense perception and logic. So these are two spectrums of it that these schools are standing. So in the PPT I would be focusing on the theme of monoism, how they are believing in one god, and how two different schools who are agreeing to monoism are seeing God and even trying to prove God in very different model constructs. So, first is Triga Shaivism. It presents a non dual model of divine consciousness where you can, denote it by saying Shiva, Prakash, or you can say it Chiti or Samvit or Parasamvit. So, they are referring to the divine consciousness as as denoting as that, and the individual self according to them is no different than the divine consciousness itself. And now on the other hand, Nyaya school is also talking about a single omniscient and God through, but they're talking through very logical parsimony. So they are standing on the same threshold of monoism, but they're trying to define it into different terms, while Nyaya is offering a very logic based thing. Triga, being a tantric school, is using logic, but it is also claiming that this consciousness or the God that we are talking about is also experiential. So that is the difference baseline between the schools. So going through the different schools, as I mentioned in the first slide, very quickly, is Sankhya a dualist school where they talk about consciousness in the terms of Purush, and the matter or principle of evolution as Prakriti. So here they don't Purush is not actually the creator or the personal God that they are actually seeing, and that is how they are defining it, but it's a conscious principle present within each individual. That's they are defining consciousness. So what how are they situating God or and consciousness together? They do not posit a personal or a creative God, but they say that liberation only occurs in the individual through his or her purush recognizes its distinct nature apart from prakriti. So this is how they are situating where consciousness lies and where God lies. And in this framework, consciousness is primordial and serves as the ultimate witness to the material process. This is something that we all know about Sankhya school. And while there is no expertise, like there is no discussion about or conversion of God or consciousness, put forth by the school, but they very profoundly put consciousness as the ultimate reality. Now, going to Nyay, this is I'll go through this slide quickly because I would be discussing about Nyay school in detail later on. So these schools, they are debating, they have detailed logical and analytical framework which are mostly aimed to establish both external and the real world. They want to establish logically the existence of both. And consciousness is an actually attribute, a gun of the jeev, the individual soul, which is capable of perception and inference. That's what consciousness is to them. So, a key argument in the phenomena of reasoning, perception, and systematic order in the universe requires a foundational or omniscient or omnipresent divine principle. That's what they are stating. So now they state that God is the ultimate cause or the sustainer or the logical ground of the cosmos. That's how they define God and consciousness. So the conversion factor here, that consciousness is seen as a property or a gun of individual souls, but is somehow indirectly connected with a divine principle. The orderly function of the consciousness, like especially in perception or cognition that we are talking about, it is argued to be possibly only under the under the realm of the supreme conscious agent God, who maintains cosmic order. That's what the argument that they put forward. When I am defining all this, the notion of God, I am talking about the later Nyaya or the Nav Nyaya which has come about. Therefore, through this, system treats God and individual consciousness as ontologically different. The existence and proper functioning of consciousness is ultimately dependent on the divine, suggesting a form of conversion where the divine is necessary for the conscious experience. Now, moving forward very quickly through the slide is Advait Vedant, as very popular school that we know, and they hold that the Atman or the individual self is not different from the Brahman, the ultimate reality, which is pure, undifferentiated consciousness, and the multiplicity or the distinction in the phenomenal world are attributed to ignorance or avidya or illusion in a way. So now, how are they connecting? How the conversion happening of God and consciousness? So they are saying that God is identical with consciousness here. The realization of this non-dual reality, which is self-realization, is the path of liberation for them. And they are not actually they don't, they blur the separation between the divine and the individual consciousness, and they are just saying that there are two aspects maybe lying under the same underlying reality. Now, Yogacara Buddhists, or on the other hand, are very clear when they say that they are very they perceive the external world as a projection or a construction of the mind itself, and all phenomena are viewed as manifestation of consciousness. And unlike these schools, other schools, they do not affirm to the existence of a creator God. Instead, they focus on the transformation or the purification of consciousness to achieve enlightenment. So how are the concepts of God and consciousness viewed in the school? So because they are not talking, they have not accepted that God exists. So then the concept of the supreme deity is absent. The school foreground consciousness as the sole reality behind all experience. They don't give any sort of attributes to God, and they don't believe in it. And the process of attaining awake self realization, if we say, is actually the realizing the fundamental nature of the consciousness, and it's through one's personal experience with the ultimate nature of reality. And they don't say that okay, there has to be a label of another entity in between of a god or consciousness. For them, consciousness is far sufficient for the manifestation or for the world or even for individual experiences. Now, Triga Shaivism, a tantric school which has some grounding in Vedas also. Now they, posit, they propose the ultimate reality as Shiva, as I was mentioning earlier, but that is a transcendental reality and it's also eminent at the same time. So it articulates a dynamic non-dualism where the world is the Leela of the divine consciousness. That's how they are defining it. So now they have different function. Shiva is incomplete without the Shakti. So Shakti can be seen in two different terminologies. One is spand, the vibration or the throb or pulse, and the other is vimarsh, which is the reflective cognitions. Both can be different, you can say, attributes or aspects of Shakti when we say, and which is not different from Shiva himself, because it's a non-dualist school, and it's more of an absolutist school where they're just believing that Shiva is only the ultimate reality and Shakti is inseparable from it. So, and they are believing in God. So they just say that the God and consciousness are not separate, and they are the two expression of the same fundamental reality. So they are sticking to the theory of that, yes, God is there, but it's no different than the consciousness, the attributes or the nature or the characteristics, even the nature itself is the same of both. So, and every individual here is seen as the manifestation of that divine consciousness. So they don't even see the individual, jeev or pashu in this matter any different from Shiva. And Shiva is the source and the essence of all consciousness here. So they assert that through direct experience, anubhav, and transformative practices, one can recognize the word I've translated as, because the main word here is pratyabhigna, the non-difference between the individual self and the divine. And the God and consciousness is the central tenet that challenges the dualistic separation, suggesting an immanent and integrative vision of ultimate reality. Now, as I was saying earlier, that there'll be two schools that I would be discussing in depth. And I'm jumping through the ppts fast, because I want to cover up both how that both of them are trying to prove the existence of one God. So let's just take nyay. So as I was saying that, the sophisticated arguments about the existence of Ishwar, I'm translating as God in between, but the word that they use is Ishwar. It's actually in the later phases that, it has been discussed. And Udiana is the person, the philosopher, the thinker that is given the credit for, coming up with this argument to prove the existence of God. Now, they use logic, causality, order in nature, moral theory, and spiritual authority to argue for the existence of an intelligent, omniscient, and omnipotent being, which is Ishwar. And while they are doing this, the key arguments for the God in later Nyaya are actually the four: the causality argument, the order and design argument, the moral argument, and the scripture authority argument that they are presenting. So, getting into the arguments properly, what is the argument, how are they reasoning it, and what is the conclusion, just so to make the slides easier and for to have a much better comprehension of how Nyaya is seeing this. I have put in the English translations here, not the sutras here. So the first argument is from the cause and effect causality, where they are arguing that the world is an effect and there must be an intelligent cause. So then they're reasoning by saying that just as a pot implies a potter, the complex or ordered universe implies an intelligent creator. That's how they're reasoning it, and they're concluding by saying that this creator is Ishwar, who's omniscient and omnipotent. The next argument that they are doing is that they are clubbing it with conjunction or organization. The argument that they give is that innate atoms cannot combine on their own to form complex substances without guidance. So, and the reasoning for this argument that they're trying to provide is that the coordination and the purposeful arrangement of atoms required an organizer. So they are thus concluding by saying that Ishwar is necessary to explain the organization of matter. Then going on to the third argument, they argue that, the preservation and consistent functioning of the world suggests an oversight. And they're reasoning it by saying that the natural laws and regularities require a conscious regulator. Thus, they say that Ishwar maintains cosmic order. Then, going on to the fourth argument, they say that the Vedas are a reliable source of knowledge but require a trustworthy author, and only an omniscient being could have composed the Vedas. Thus, they conclude by saying that Ishwar is the author of the Vedas, ensuring their validity. The fifth argument that they are giving is that the just distribution of karmic results implies a moral governor. The reasoning that they're providing for such an argument is they're stating that karma requires a conscious, impartial administrator to ensure ethical balance, and they're concluding by saying that Ishwar is that administrator who is who actually defines the law of karma with justice and omniscience. The last argument that they present is that the reliable scriptural testimony or shruti reveals the existence of God. The Vedas are considered authoritative in Nyaya, so and they thus they affirm the reality of Ishwar, because God existence is established through the valid verbal testimony. That's the last argument that they are presenting. On the other hand, Trika Shaivism is also talking about monoism, but the Shaivites are taking a different route, a little different route on how to establish this monoism. So God as Atman, or the universal self. So Utpal Deva is in his Ishwar Pratibha Karika is the person responsible who came up with the argument about the existence of God. He has also argued against Sankhya and Buddhist and other schools, but I would be focusing on the crux of the arguments, not the arguments within the schools. So Utpal Deva states that within the framework of Kashmir Saivism, it identifies God as a universal self. And the sutra goes on to say in Kashmir Saivism, God is understood as the inner self, Atman, of all beings, the ultimate consciousness that both transcends and pervades the world. And the second point, the nature, this is the nature of God that Utpal Deva has defined. He says that he emphasizes that God is not a material or external creator, but a self-luminous consciousness. God is not a material entity or a remote creator, but rather the self-revealing consciousness, Chit, that is self-aware and the very ground of all knowledge and existence. The next, they say that God as the agent behind the world. Utpal Deva argues that the purposeful order of the world implies a conscious agent behind it. This has very much parallels to what Nyay also was trying to pinpoint in one of their arguments to establish God. They say the world appears to have a purpose, but they take a little bit of a root. The baseline is the same, where they're saying that a conscious agent is behind the order of the world, but they say that they bring in the concept of prayojan, a purpose here, whereas Nyaya don't go into this kind of an argument. And they say that this the existence of a purposeful agent or God can be inferred. Just because the world appears to have a purpose, so a purposeful agent can be viewed. The fourth point is swatantriya, God's absolute freedom. Central to Utpal Deva's theology is God's swatantriya, or absolute freedom. Shiva's creative activity is not compelled by anything external. It is free and playful manifestation, Leela, of his inner nature, his swatantriya, which is autonomy or sovereignty, if we want to state in those terms. Okay, and the other is that God is all beyond and beyond all. Where how they are stating it, so Utpal Deva states that God is not separate from the world, but both eminent and transcendent. As I was mentioning earlier, this is a pantheistic view. God is not the other than the world, yet He is more than the world. The world is His body, but He also transcends it. That's how Utpal Deva defines it. The last point here is recognition, pratibhigna, of one's own divine nature. Now, this is where the experiential part that I was referring to when I was defining the monoism that Shaivites are putting forward. When they say the goal of spiritual realization is the recognition of oneself as Shiva. So that's pratibhigna for you. Liberation is not escape from the world, but the recognition, pratibhigna, that one is none other than Shiva himself, the all encompassing consciousness. Now, the argument or the proofs of existence of God are based on the purpose prayojan, because that's the core of the argument. So the first point is Utpal Deva states that by observing that the worldly phenomenon exhibit purpose, which implies intentionality in some way, we experience a purposeful world. It is filled with action that are goal directed, implying agency and cognition. The second point, he says purpose implies a consonant agent. He argues that the purpose cannot exist without a conscious being who holds and directs towards a goal. Purpose cannot be posited without a conscious agent. That which acts with a goal in view must be aware of that goal. moving forward to the third point, the limitation of innate matter. Utpal Deva critiques materialist accounts, stating that the matter cannot initiate purposeful action. An unconscious object, being innate, cannot initiate or direct action towards a goal. Purpose must stem from consciousness. This actually sutra is taken from the argument which Utpal Deva has with Sankhya school when they talk when he's debating against the existence of Prakriti. And the fourth point here is inference to a supreme conscious agent. From this, he infers the existence of a supreme conscious agent, Ishwar, who imparts purpose and order to the cosmos. The Anuman from the existence of a purpose is to
You have 10 minutes more, please.
yes, sure, sorry, is to a supreme conscious agent who is responsible for it. This is Ishvara. And the last point is obviously through Swatantriya, as I was mentioning earlier. And it's actually he's not determined by anything external, but acts out of his own free will. And the last point is that he's the inner self of all, the universal Atman that we were discussing. This Ishwar is not separate from the world. He is its inner self, the universal consciousness manifesting all. Now, very quickly, I'm going to just go through these, read out these points to you. This is what Trika Shaivism puts forward for God and consciousness, because it's the same concept for them. The world exhibits purposeful order. Purpose implies a conscious agent. Matter cannot be that agent. Hence, a supreme conscious being, Ishwar, must exist. This being is free. It has swatantriya and the inner self of all. This is a now, if you see each school has different metaphysical grounds of their ultimate reality or consciousness, how they're possessing. Some are agreeing to the concept of God, some are not agreeing to the concept of God. In this PPT, I wanted to focus mainly on Nyay and Triga, because both are arguing for a monotheistic God, but have a very different outlook towards that. Yeah, with that, I'm sorry, I exceeded my time. I would be okay. I'll just stop sharing and come back for the Q&A. Yeah.